I've been following you for a while, and one thing that you kind of posted a lot was about that movie Dark City, and you made me watch that. What
It's a good
exactly?
movie.
Yeah. Now the end was very weird. I was not expecting that. But what exactly, in your opinion, are the parallels between the two, between what's going on or what happened during COVID and that? Like, other than just this constant information, and yeah, I'll let you kind of answer that.
Well, I'm interested in your answer to that. What do you think are the parallels?
Well, I hope not the end, because that just makes everything seem like it's nothing's real, right? Pretty much. But I saw the movie like maybe 6 months ago. I'm actually not too, I can't remember all the whole storyline, but it was really dark. And like, do you like how if you believe that was what's happening, or in general, if that's your kind of thought about that's where we are. Like, how do you even have any like? What's your north star? How do you feel positive about the world if that's
Well,
the reality we're in?
so it's interesting because Alex, who wrote it and produced it, thinks Alex Proyas thinks that it's a very optimistic movie, and he's very happy that in Dark City Part One, Dark City, that the humans win in the end. So I would say that I can certainly understand how you might perceive it as having um, an ending contrary to the way I've said I perceive it, but it was the director and the author's intent to have a positive humans win type of solution at the end. Other than that, in terms of the time, I mean, what was your thought about how it uses time and how it kind of recreates a person's memory?
So yeah, I mean it's really interesting where everything freezes and they're just reorganizing everything. I personally don't see the parallel, but I was just wondering how much of it is you really feel that it's really identical. Like, I suppose obviously there's some parallels to it. The biggest one I noticed is just like how 2 years ago, right? I can't remember a single thing. So like your idea of journaling and writing stuff down, I wish I did. I wish I listened to you,
Yeah.
but I do feel that fog, and I don't remember stuff, right? So like I see that part of it.
Okay, well, so you have to understand the way memory works. And before we were discussing books, and a part of that was my own interest in. I hate to say the term brainwashing because that's actually got kind of a clinical definition, but then it's got this kind of open vernacular type of a non-definition. So I'm gonna just use brainwashing in its non-scientific and just common vernacular type of way, and that has a lot to do with the way memory works. And I became very interested in the way the mind retains memories. In fact, what is memory? And in the way the mind retains memories. And that's also it's something that's got to be understood to really appreciate what we're going through now, day to day, what we're going through with COVID. In fact, why I said that it was a bad strategy, and I've emphasized this, why DeSantis should not be emphasizing his COVID response, why that creates this kind of a dark city effect, but it's all nightmare. So it's kind of like having a vision of the past. It's all nightmare, which is obviously such a bad thing. Um, and so you also have to understand the way memory works. And there's a lot of good books about that. There's a lot of scientific analysis of the behavioral sciences of how memory works and what affects memories and different types of memory, autobiographical memory, associative memory. And memory is a big part of what Dark City is about, right? It's about how memories are kind of are in instructions. Memories are in instructions, right? They're getting kind of implanted into people rather than having been lived, where it would be autobiographical. It's being they're receiving memory instructions. So you have to, and how time can be is a telescope, right? Time can be collapsed like a telescope, or it can be expanded like a telescope, and how that affects the perception of every moment that we exist within. So you can collapse time or you can expand time, And this also affects the way we actually think, because people talk about cognitive dissonance a lot, right? How could somebody believe this and do that at the same time, or where it appears, you said this yesterday, but now you said something else, is that makes you a hypocrite and this and that. And that also has a lot to do with the way time works, because the person is not thinking, and I'm just making this scenario up, but in what I've kind of loosely described, the person is not having two contradictory thoughts, two conflicting or competing thoughts that are kind of occurring within the same moment. They're actually the way time telescopes. So a person can think one thing in right now, okay, at 3:06, a person can think something entirely different at 3:07. So now I can use time. If I can master time in the way people perceive time, I can telescope it so that in between 3:06 and 3:07, there's a lot of trauma, there's a lot of things that happen, and that will telescope it further away, so that even though there's only been a minute or a 2 minute difference, I can make the mind perceive it as a week. Does that make sense to you? Uh, or I can take that week and collapse it so that it appears that it's only 1 minute, or only 30 seconds have elapsed. So you also have Dark City is also about the way people's memory works, and a lot of what I'm interested in is the way people's memory and the different types of memory. I think Elon Musk said, always question, whose instructions, who's I forget the way he expressed it better than I ever could. The way I understood it was always challenge, who's coded your software. But so Dark City for me is just about how time is used, how time is kind of instrumentalized and can be used. And I knew that what was going to happen with COVID was that people really weren't going to remember. And I keep a very meticulous log, and I've got a staff of people who helped me at one part with a very complex part of it in terms of the science of certain things from my office. But I've kept a very meticulous log, and I knew very early, I knew around March, that people were not going to remember the way it was. I learned because of the way memory is recreated. So when I'm asking you what you thought of something 3 years ago, you're not telling me what you thought of it 3 years ago. You're telling me what you thought of it right now, and you're recreating all the memories that you had from 3 years ago, but you're also doing it but because you're drawing upon that recreation today, you're reassembling all of those memories, and they're all influenced by your own emotional state, your anxiety, your depression, your happiness, love affairs, what you ate this morning. All of these different type of things will influence the way that memory is reassembled and recreated. So people cannot remember what happened in March of 2020. They say they can, but what they say is important to me, and I value what people say. But just because they say it doesn't make it true. So I'm also interested. It's their truth, but I'm also interested because there is a truth. I know that these things happen because I'm very meticulous and I documented all these things. And people will say, "Yes, I remember that," but it wasn't that big of a deal. If you ask a lot of people what they if COVID was a big deal, particularly right now I'm in New York. If you ask people in New York, what they recall about COVID, they will not recall all of its emotional intensity, all of the friends that they lost, all of the combats, the pharmaceutical combats that that they wielded arms for. They won't remember any. So I'm also when you say Dark City, yeah, Dark City is a very important movie to me because it goes over all of those types of things. That's really what the movie is about. Hopefully there'll be a Dark City too, but that's out of my control. But I know it's an interest for Alex. The last time we spoke about it, is that responsive to your question?
That is, and just as a quick follow-up, have you found a way to use that to your benefit, or can you explain how you've maybe used that whole concept to your benefit?
Well, it's all to my benefit because again, in March of 2020, I told people that they're not going to remember the way things are, and I told them I'm keeping a log. And then I remember on a political front, because I knew some people who were involved in a Trump campaign, why I don't do something with my log now or this or that. Um, and I knew that there would be new crises that are emerging because the way these elites are operating, and this is also kind of an idea of the way the mind works, but the way the elites are operating is it's not just a sensory overload. They're not just overwhelming our senses, but what they're also doing is overwhelming our cognitive ability to reason through all of it because the mind can only hold about maybe 5 or 6 thoughts at a time in its frontal lobe, and so they want to um, they they want to have firm control over what those 5 or 6 thoughts are going to be, and leave very little room for me to utilize my own cognitive abilities. So, the best I can do out of everything that I've kind of learned and read and have watched and observed and tried to examine critically is to just I keep everything to myself, and conversations like this on Spaces are actually helpful to me because again, it's trying to take things out of my head, and be able to verbalize them so that they're coherent outside of my head. And it's an iterative type of process. So, I'm sure later this afternoon or this evening while I'm meditating, I'll be kind of, reviewing again that telescoping time type of thing. I'll be reviewing some of this conversation and how I said, and is this the way I wanted, and how can I improve upon what I said so that it makes more sense to me? Because ultimately, we're all very selfish things, and the value to this conversation is almost entirely selfish for me. Um, but so that what I've gotten out of it is really just my ability to is an improvement upon my ability to explain this to myself. Does that make sense?
Perfectly. Yeah. Thanks a lot, Adam.
All right, cool. Thank you for the question. So